people thought the Braxton family drama had finally cooled down, until DA Brat stepped in and lit the entire situation on fire. Out of nowhere, she claimed she had been sitting on information for years, watching the world believe one version of events while the real story was kept behind closed doors. And according to her, Toni Braxton has been hiding something explosive, something involving Birdman and Tamar. Fans were confused at first, thinking it was just another messy rumor. But then DA Brat doubled down. She said she had receipts. Real ones. The kind that make people go silent. The kind that shake a family's reputation to its core. Suddenly, the internet exploded with questions. What did she find? Why did she wait until now? And why is Toni allegedly trying so hard to shut it down? The clip that started everything is only a few seconds long, but those few seconds were enough to send the Braxton fandom into full meltdown. Because DA Brat didn't just hint at drama. She pointed directly at a timeline, a relationship, and a secret that could change the entire narrative people have believed for over a decade. And now everyone wants to know the same thing. What exactly did Toni try to hide? Toni Braxton had always carried herself with a calm, polished presence, the kind of aura that made people think she was above the usual celebrity chaos. For years, fans admired how she moved, how she spoke, how she managed to stay graceful even when her family was falling apart on television. But the truth is, behind that calm exterior, there were cracks forming long before the public ever noticed them. And DA Brat claims she saw those cracks up close, long before anyone else dared to talk about them. It all goes back to the time when Toni was first linked to Birdman. At the time, people thought it was a strange pairing, but harmless. Toni looked happy, Birdman seemed protective, and the world just moved on. But according to DA Brat, that relationship was never as simple as it looked. She hinted that the connection between Toni and Birdman had blurred lines that weren't supposed to be crossed, lines that reached into parts of the Braxton family that fans never expected. Tamar, on the other hand, had always been open about her feelings. Loud, emotional, unfiltered. She never hid anything. If she was upset, the world knew. If she felt betrayed, the world heard it. And that's exactly why DA Brat's claim hit so hard. Because she didn't accuse Tamar of anything messy. She suggested that Tamar might have been the one caught in the crossfire of something she never planned. Something she didn't start. Something she may have been dragged into without even realizing how deep it ran. What DA Brat said wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, almost casual, like someone mentioning something they assumed everyone already knew. She said the energy between Birdman and Tamar had been off for years. She said there were moments where the room would go quiet when those two were near each other. She said Toni noticed it too. And instead of addressing it, she allegedly shut it down, told everyone to keep their mouths closed, and pretended nothing had happened. According to DA Brat, it wasn't one single incident. It was a collection of small moments that stacked up over time. Private glances that lasted a little too long. Conversations that ended abruptly when someone walked into the room. Tension that didn't make sense unless there was something underneath it. And the biggest question was whether Toni confronted anyone about it behind the scenes or if she was trying to protect her own image at all costs. Back then, the Braxton family was still filming their reality show, and everything revolved around keeping the brand strong. They couldn't afford another scandal. They couldn't survive another fracture. So if anything questionable happened, it had to be buried deeper than anything else. And DA Brat claims she watched that happen more than once. She said she saw the sisters look at each other with silent questions they never asked out loud. She said she saw Tamar swallow her emotions, the first time anyone had seen her do that. And she said Birdman acted like nothing was wrong, even when the energy in the room shifted completely. Toni, however, carried all of it on her shoulders. She was the one everyone looked to, the leader, the icon, the sister who was supposed to keep the family balanced. And because of that image, DA Brat believes Toni may have gone too far trying to protect something that wasn't worth protecting. She kept the peace, but at a price. A price that created resentment, confusion, and silent distance between people who should have trusted one another. At one point, DA Brat said she confronted someone privately about what she noticed. She didn't say who it was. She didn't give names. But she described the look on their face like they had been waiting for someone to finally bring it up. Like the truth wasn't shocking, just heavy. She said the person didn't deny anything. They didn't confirm it either. They just told her, "It's complicated," and that one sentence told her everything she needed to know. Tamar eventually started changing around that time too. She wasn't as loud. She wasn't as confident. There were moments on the show where she looked distracted. Moments where her mood shifted for no clear reason. Moments where fans thought it was just a personality, but DA Brat insists those were symptoms of deeper emotional confusion. She said Tamar was caught between loyalty to her sister, loyalty to herself, and loyalty to the image they were all trying so hard to maintain. Birdman didn't help the situation either. He was unpredictable, sometimes affectionate, sometimes distant, sometimes present, sometimes completely unreachable. His behavior added layers of uncertainty to a situation that was already fragile. DA Brat said she noticed how he talked to Toni in private, how their conversations weren't always soft or romantic. Sometimes Toni looked more stressed after speaking to him, not reassured. And DA Brat believes that stress came from more than just their relationship. It came from keeping too many secrets at once. As time passed, small details began lining up in ways that didn't make sense unless DA Brat's version of events was true. Tamar would avoid certain topics. Birdman would avoid certain rooms. Toni would redirect conversations anytime someone tried to push deeper. And the more they tried to hide it, the more obvious it became to people who were paying attention. DA Brat says she kept quiet all these years because she respected the family. She didn't want to be the one to expose them. She didn't want to make a private hurt into a public spectacle. But losing trust, losing friendships, and watching the family publicly fall apart anyway made her question whether silence was ever the right choice. She said watching Toni pretend everything was fine while Tamar fell apart emotionally was a final straw for her. Because if a secret is hurting everyone, maybe it was never a secret worth keeping. When DA Brat finally spoke up publicly, she didn't expect the internet to explode the way it did. She thought people would connect the dots quietly. Instead, fans started digging into old interviews, old episodes, old red carpet footage. Suddenly, every small detail was being analyzed. Every awkward moment, every strange facial expression, every uncomfortable silence. Fans started pulling up clips of Tamar talking about betrayal, loyalty, and feeling unsupported. They compared them to Toni talking about strength, privacy, and boundaries. And in between all of that, Birdman's reactions looked colder than anyone expected. The timing of DA Brat's reveal was also suspicious to many. Why now? Why after all these years? But according to her, the timing wasn't chosen for drama. It was chosen because she felt the truth had already started to leak in pieces. She said the internet had been getting close for months, and she didn't want a messy, exaggerated version to spread. She wanted the truth to come from someone who actually witnessed it. The more she explained, the more sense it made. She wasn't trying to destroy Toni. She wasn't trying to embarrass Tamar. She was trying to clear the air about something that had been misinterpreted for years. Something she believes caused division inside a family that didn't deserve more trauma. She said the real issue was never an affair itself. It was the emotional confusion, the blurred boundaries, the lack of communication, and the silence that followed. And in her words, silence is what destroyed everything. After DA Brat's comments spread across social media, people who had followed the Braxton family for years suddenly saw old moments in a completely different light. Clips that once seemed harmless were now being shared with captions like, "How did we miss this? And this makes sense now." It was as if the truth had been sitting in plain sight the entire time, waiting for someone to connect the pieces. And DA Brat had given fans the final missing piece. People started revisiting episodes where Tamar looked frustrated for no clear reason, especially scenes where Birdman appeared unexpectedly. In one moment, Tamar was full of energy, talking loudly and laughing. The next, Birdman walked into the room and her whole expression shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was something more complicated, almost like she didn't know how to hold herself together in front of him. Fans had noticed it before, but they never questioned it. Now, with DA Brat's claims in mind, those moments felt like quiet red flags. Toni, on the other hand, had always been careful about how she spoke around Birdman. She never looked fully relaxed, even when she smiled. There was a tension in her eyes that fans mistook for shyness or privacy. But DA Brat's reveal made the public reconsider. Maybe Toni wasn't shy. Maybe she was holding onto something she didn't want to show. And maybe that tension came from trying to control a situation that was slipping out of her hands long before it reached the public. DA Brat said the real problem wasn't a scandal or betrayal. It was the emotional strain it created. When families go through uncomfortable situations, it's the silence that eats them alive. She said the Braxtons had become experts at silence. They didn't talk about things that could break the family. They didn't confront issues that made them uncomfortable. They pretended everything was fine until the pretending became exhausting. And Tamar, being the most expressive sister, was the one who cracked first. She started withdrawing. She started responding with dry one-liners instead of heartfelt reactions. She started smiling less, complaining more, and showing signs of someone who felt misunderstood but didn't want to spill the truth. On the show, it looked like her usual dramatic personality. But DA Brat insists those reactions had deeper roots. She said Tamar was stuck between love and loyalty, unsure of how to navigate emotions she wasn't supposed to have. Meanwhile, Birdman continued maintaining the same demeanor he always had. Calm, collected, almost unreadable. Fans joked for years that he never changed his expression, but that unreadable nature became suspicious in hindsight. If Tamar was emotionally overwhelmed and Toni was emotionally contained, Birdman was emotionally absent. And in the middle of all that, the confusion grew. DA Brat recalled one moment that stood out more than anything else. She didn't reveal where it happened, but she described it in a way that made viewers picture it vividly. She said she was at an industry gathering, one of those events where everyone smiles even if they are uncomfortable. She saw Tamar standing off to the side, quiet, holding a drink but barely taking a sip. She looked lost in her thoughts. Then Birdman walked up near her, not close enough for conversation, but close enough that their energy shifted. Tamar's jaw tightened. Birdman glanced her way. They didn't speak, but the silence between them felt heavier than words. Toni walked into the room a moment later. DA Brat said the way Toni's eyes moved told her everything. She scanned the room, saw both of them, and immediately switched from relaxed to tense. She walked straight toward Tamar, interrupting whatever unspoken moment was happening, and pulled her aside as if she sensed something she didn't want anyone else to notice. That was the moment DA Brat understood something wasn't right. And Toni's reaction wasn't about anger. It was about control. She wanted to keep the narrative in place, keep the family image intact, and prevent even the slightest hint of suspicion from spreading. Over time, these moments added up. Tamar began distancing herself from the family emotionally. Arguments increased. Small disagreements turned into big fights. Toni became more protective of her relationship with Birdman, even though she rarely talked about it publicly. And the sisters who once seemed inseparable started forming invisible walls between each other. Fans also began pulling up old interviews where Tamar made passive comments about trust, loyalty, and feeling unsupported. At the time, people thought she was referring to her marriage or her career struggles. Now, those same comments were being viewed as possible hints at something deeper. DA Brat said Tamar never directly brought up Birdman, but she often spoke as if she was carrying guilt or confusion she didn't know how to explain. One of the most telling things DA Brat pointed out was how Toni reacted whenever someone brought up Birdman in public. She would smile politely, give a short answer, then quickly change the subject. She never went into detail. She never expressed excitement. She never showed the kind of warmth people expect from someone in a committed relationship. DA Brat described it as a woman who was constantly watching what she said, not because she was shy, but because the truth was tangled in layers of complications. As the internet dug deeper, more theories started forming. Some fans believed there was an emotional misunderstanding between Tamar and Birdman that Toni uncovered. Others believed Toni felt overshadowed or threatened by how close Birdman and Tamar unintentionally appeared. And some believed there was no affair at all, just a chain of uncomfortable moments blown out of proportion by silence and poor communication. But what most people agreed on was that if Toni reacted as strongly as DA Brat suggested, then something must have made her feel insecure enough to protect her relationship at all costs. DA Brat said the most heartbreaking part was that the sisters never talked about it directly. Instead of addressing the issue together, they tiptoed around it. Every time Tamar tried to open up emotionally, Toni shut down the conversation. Every time Toni tried to maintain composure, Tamar unintentionally disrupted it with her raw, unfiltered emotions. Their personalities clashed in the worst way possible. When DA Brat finally broke her silence publicly, she said she wasn't trying to create drama. She said she wanted the world to understand why the Braxton family fell apart in ways fans couldn't fully understand at the time. She said Toni's calmness wasn't peace, it was suppression. Tamar's outbursts weren't immaturity, they were pain. And Birdman's quiet demeanor wasn't loyalty, it was detachment. The reaction from the public was immediate. Thousands of comments poured in across platforms. Some defended Toni, others defended Tamar. A few questioned Birdman, and many said they believed DA Brat because her story filled in emotional gaps no one had been able to explain for years. People started posting statements like, "This explains everything about season 5 and Tamar was hurting and we didn't even know." The emotional timeline suddenly made sense. The distance, the arguments, the awkward moments on camera. All of it connected back to those silent tensions DA Brat described. As the discussion grew, reporters and bloggers began reaching out to people close to the family. No one gave a direct answer, but the silence itself became suspicious. If nothing happened, why were so many people refusing to speak? Why was everyone acting like they'd been warned not to open their mouths? DA Brat hinted that the Braxtons always had a rule: family business stays in the family. And maybe that rule had protected them for years. But now, it was hurting them. The more DA Brat talked, the more it became clear that she wasn't focused on exposing a scandal. She was focused on explaining a pattern of pain. She said the Braxtons could have healed if they had been honest with each other. Instead, they let assumptions grow into wounds. They let silence replace conversations. And by the time they realized how deep the damage ran, it was too late to fix it quietly. According to DA Brat, Toni wanted to protect her image. Tamar wanted to protect her heart. And Birdman wanted to protect himself from being dragged into family drama. But in trying to protect their individual worlds, they all ended up losing something bigger: trust. And trust, once cracked, is almost impossible to repair. As the conversation around DA Brat's comments intensified, people began paying closer attention to the emotional patterns that had shaped the Braxton family for years. The family had always presented themselves as close-knit, loving, and supportive. But anyone who watched their show closely could see the tension simmering beneath the surface. It wasn't always loud or explosive. Sometimes it was quiet. Sometimes it was hidden in long pauses, avoided glances, or conversations that shifted direction too quickly. And now, with DA Brat's reveal, those moments didn't look harmless anymore. People started pulling up interviews where Toni seemed guarded whenever questions about her personal life came up. She would laugh softly, give brief answers, and move on. At the time, it looked like she was just private. But DA Brat suggested something else. Toni wasn't avoiding the questions because she was shy. She was avoiding them because she didn't want cracks in her relationship to become public. She was protecting something she feared might break if exposed to the harsh light of public speculation. Tamar, meanwhile, had always been expressive. She wore her emotions openly, even when she didn't intend to. Her fans loved her honesty, but that same honesty often exposed the deeper emotional turmoil she was carrying. DA Brat hinted that Tamar wasn't just dealing with marital problems or career struggles. She was dealing with unspoken guilt, unresolved confusion, and a kind of emotional discomfort she didn't know how to articulate without causing more damage. The heart of the situation wasn't a scandal or wrongdoing. It was emotional entanglement. DA Brat made it clear that people misunderstand how complicated relationships can become when communication breaks down. She said Tamar didn't cross lines intentionally. She said Birdman wasn't seeking drama. She said Toni wasn't losing control. Instead, all three were navigating a situation led with misread signals, suppressed feelings, and unresolved tension. One moment DA Brat described stood out to many who heard her speak. She said there was a time when Tamar approached Toni privately, wanting to talk, wanting to clear the air, wanting to finally address whatever had been building between them. Tamar didn't want to fight. She wanted honesty. But Toni, already worn down from trying to keep the family together, shut the conversation down before it even began. She said it wasn't the right time. She said the family was already stressed. She said opening that door would create more chaos than healing. To Tamar, that rejection felt like punishment. She felt unheard, unseen, and dismissed. She didn't want to hurt her sister. She just wanted clarity. And instead of receiving clarity, she received silence. Brat believes that moment was the beginning of the emotional distance everyone eventually noticed on camera. As Tamar struggled with her emotions, she began acting out in ways that fans didn't understand at the time. She became moodier, less patient, more defensive. People online accused her of being dramatic or messy, but Brat defended her. She said Tamar wasn't being dramatic for attention. She was reacting to emotional pressure she couldn't talk about openly. She was stuck between protecting her sister's image and understanding her own feelings. Toni wasn't ignoring her sister on purpose either. She was dealing with her own fears. Brat explained that Toni had always felt responsible for maintaining balance in the family. She felt like the glue, the one who had to remain composed no matter what. If she fell apart, everything else would follow. So instead of confronting uncomfortable truths, she buried them. She believed that pretending things were fine would eventually make them fine. But instead, it created a quiet emotional war inside the family. Birdman continued existing on the edges of the situation, neither fully engaged nor fully detached. It wasn't clear whether he understood how much tension he unintentionally contributed to. Brat suggested that he may have sensed the discomfort, but not fully grasped its depth. He wasn't expressive, so his silence amplified the confusion. In a family where emotions were loud and visible, Birdman's calmness became another layer of misunderstanding. Fans began analyzing moments where Toni, Tamar, and Birdman were in the same room. They noticed how Toni would position herself physically between Tamar and Birdman during group events. They noticed how Tamar avoided eye contact when Birdman spoke. They noticed how Birdman's presence shifted the energy of every scene without him saying a word. What once looked like normal awkwardness now resembled unspoken tension. Brat said the most heartbreaking part was how long this emotional distance lasted. Years went by without a proper conversation. Years of suppressed feelings turned into resentment. Years of avoided topics turned into fractured relationships. And because no one addressed the problem head-on, each misunderstanding grew larger than the last. The breaking point for Tamar came during a private family gathering long before the public saw the fallout. Brat didn't give details, but she said Tamar finally reached a moment where she couldn't pretend anymore. She tried once again to bring her feelings to the surface. She tried to express her confusion, her guilt, and her longing for honesty. But Toni, overwhelmed by the fear of losing control, shut down again. She told Tamar the past didn't matter and they needed to move forward. But for Tamar, the past mattered because it shaped everything that came after. Tamar left the gathering early that night. Brat said she saw tears in Tamar's eyes, not because of anger, but because of exhaustion. Tamar felt like she had been carrying emotions she wasn't allowed to express. She felt misunderstood, judged, and isolated. Brat believes that moment planted seeds of emotional distance that eventually spiraled into the public breakdowns people later witnessed. Toni wasn't unaffected either. She carried her own guilt. She knew her silence had created problems. She knew her attempts to control the narrative had backfired. She knew she had pushed her sister away in an attempt to protect her relationship. But by the time she realized how much damage had been done, the gap felt impossible to repair. As Brat explained all this, she made it clear that none of the sisters were villains. They were human. They were emotional. They loved each other deeply but handled conflict in completely opposite ways. Toni internalized everything. Tamar externalized everything. Birdman kept everything to himself. And that combination created a storm of misunderstandings. The public began seeing the Braxton family differently. Instead of focusing on gossip or rumors, people started expressing empathy. Fans wrote long messages about communication, family trauma, and emotional pain. They talked about how common it is for families to break apart not because of big scandals, but because of small unspoken moments that grow into something bigger. What Brat really did was give people the context they never had. She didn't expose a secret affair. She exposed the emotional truth behind years of tension. She said the Braxton family didn't fall apart because someone was unfaithful. They fell apart because emotional walls were built so high that no one could climb over them. As the story continued spreading, people wondered whether Toni, Tamar, or Birdman would address it. But none of them spoke publicly, and that silence only fueled the belief that DA Brat's account held weight. If it wasn't true, why not deny it? Why not clear the air? Why not correct the narrative? Instead, the family remained quiet, just as they always had. And for many fans, that silence said more than words ever could. As the silence from the Braxton family continued, people online felt a strange mix of curiosity and sadness. It wasn't the kind of story where someone gets exposed and the internet cheers. This one felt heavier, more personal. Fans weren't pointing fingers anymore. They were trying to understand how a family so loved, so talented, and so connected could crumble without anyone truly noticing the cause while it was happening. DA Brat kept insisting that her reason for speaking up wasn't to embarrass anyone. She said she had watched the public create their own stories for years, making assumptions about Tamar's behavior, Toni's attitude, and Birdman's presence. And she believed people deserved the emotional truth, not the sensationalized version that had been floating around for so long. She said the family didn't fall apart suddenly. It was a slow drift, one caused by unspoken pain layered over time. Behind the scenes, the tension never exploded in one dramatic moment. It was a series of small emotional cuts. DA Brat described times when Tamar would show up to family events looking bright and energetic, only to withdraw the moment she sensed Toni's discomfort. She described how Toni would try to steer conversations into safe territories, never allowing things to go deeper. She described how Birdman often stayed near the edges of the room, avoiding the emotional current altogether. And because no one addressed the real issue, every gathering became a performance instead of a place to heal. There was one moment DA Brat mentioned quietly, one she said she would never forget. She said it happened during a holiday season, a time when families usually come together with warmth and forgiveness. The Braxtons were gathered in one house, trying to act normal despite the obvious tension. Tamar was unusually calm, sitting with her hands folded, barely speaking. Toni kept glancing at her, worried but unsure of how to approach her. Birdman stayed mostly silent, watching without expression. At some point during the evening, DA Brat walked by the hallway and saw Tamar standing alone, wiping her eyes. She wasn't sobbing loudly. She wasn't breaking down. She was just quietly letting tears fall, the kind of tears that come from holding in too much for too long. DA Brat didn't approach her. She said she didn't want to intrude, but that moment made her realize just how deep the emotional wounds had become. Tamar wasn't angry. She was heartbroken. She felt disconnected from people she loved the most. Toni's struggle was different. She wasn't someone who cried publicly or admitted her fears easily. DA Brat said Toni's pain showed up in subtle ways. She became more controlling about details, more careful about what she said, more protective of her personal life. It was a way of coping, but it also created more distance. She believed silence was the safer choice. But silence became a wall, one that separated her from her sister more than any argument ever could. Birdman remained a complicated part of the dynamic. DA Brat made it clear that he didn't intentionally cause chaos. He simply didn't know how to navigate the emotional environment he walked into. He was used to being private, reserved, and unexpressive. But in a family shaped by strong personalities and raw emotions, his distance became another source of misinterpretation. Some saw him as uncaring, others saw him as detached. And in the middle of those perceptions, Tamar and Toni both ended up carrying burdens they couldn't fully explain. The truth DA Brat kept repeating was that no one cheated. No one betrayed anyone in the way the public assumed. The real betrayal was emotional neglect. The sisters didn't listen to each other when it mattered. They didn't trust each other with their vulnerabilities. And the silence that grew between them became louder than any fight could have been. Over time, the emotional distance turned into physical distance. Family gatherings became less frequent. Calls became shorter. Misunderstandings were left unresolved. Toni focused on her career and maintaining her peaceful image. Tamar focused on healing herself outside the family structure. And Birdman simply drifted, unsure of how to fit into a situation that already felt broken. When DA Brat finally spoke publicly, she said she knew there would be consequences. She knew the Braxtons might feel hurt or exposed. But she also believed someone needed to break the silence before the emotional narrative became even more distorted. She believed people needed to understand that families don't fall apart because of dramatic scandals. They fall apart because vulnerable conversations never happen. Fans reacted strongly to this perspective. Instead of blaming Tamar or Toni, many people started reflecting on their own families, their own silent tensions, their own unresolved conflicts. Comments began flooding in from viewers who said they understood the pain of carrying unspoken emotions. They talked about sisters who drifted apart, siblings who misunderstood each other, and relationships that were never repaired because no one knew how to speak honestly without causing more harm. The story grew far beyond gossip. It became a conversation about emotional health, communication, and healing. And in a strange way, the Braxton family's silence allowed the world to fill in the gaps with empathy instead of judgment. Brat said her hope wasn't to expose the family, but to help the world understand why certain things happened the way they did. She said Tamar's breakdowns weren't attention-seeking. They were emotional spirals caused by years of silence. She said Toni's distance wasn't coldness. It was fear of losing control. She said Birdman's quiet nature wasn't guilt. It was emotional unfamiliarity. The lasting impact of Brat's reveal wasn't the shock factor. It was the clarity it brought to a decade of confusion. People finally understood that the Braxtons didn't have a scandal. They had a communication problem. And communication problems, when ignored, become emotional disasters. As for whether the family will ever address the situation publicly, no one knows. Toni remains private. Tamar speaks from the heart but avoids reopening old wounds. Birdman rarely gives explanations about anything, and their silence continues to leave room for interpretation. Yet, even with all the unanswered questions, one thing became clear to everyone paying attention. The emotional truth behind the story was far more impactful than any rumor ever could have been. And sometimes, the biggest revelations aren't about what people did, but about what they didn't say. Because in the end, silence can hurt louder than anything spoken out loud. If you've been following this story from the beginning, you can see how deep the pain runs and how silence can shape a family more than any rumor ever could. If you want the truth behind the headlines, the real emotions and the parts they never show on camera, then make sure you stay connected right here. Tap the like button if this breakdown helped you understand the bigger picture. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and let me know which part of the story shocked you the most. And if you want more honest, detailed, no-filter storytelling just like this, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next episode. Your support keeps these conversations going. And trust me, there's always more happening behind the scenes than anyone realizes. Stay tuned, stay curious, and stay locked in with us.